My name is Marissa Quinn, and I am 18. Most people believe a quiet home signifies harmony, but they could not be more mistaken. There is a kind of stillness that hums with emptiness instead of peace. It seeps into the walls and vibrates in your ribs until you want to shout just to prove you are real, yet no one would even look up. That was the backdrop of my childhood. I was the middle child, which in my family translated to invisible. My sister Lena, the oldest, was their pride, the flawless cheerleader with a smile built for family photos and parents who could not stop bragging. Then came Aaron, the baby, showered with affection no matter what he did. He could spill a glass of milk and still earn a gentle laugh and a pat on the head. And me? I was the one who learned to manage on my own, the girl whose silence blended right into the wallpaper. At 12, I decided that perhaps achievement could buy affection. I brought home straight A's. Nothing changed. I scrubbed my room until it sparkled, helped with chores, and made dinner when mom worked late, hoping for a simple thank you or a proud smile. Instead, Lena received bouquets for making the cheer squad. Aaron got a shiny new Xbox for grades that barely passed. My reward was the same as always, the kind of quiet that swallows sound. Birthdays blurred together. Sometimes there was a card, sometimes not. When I turned 16, they forgot entirely, claiming life was just too busy. That night, I sat on my bed staring at my phone, waiting for even one text. None arrived. Their neglect was not cruel in volume. No yelling, no slamming doors, just the dull, constant ache of being unseen. I cooked, cleaned, rode the bus, and existed in the background. Eventually, it hit me that I could vanish for days and they would not notice. The realization did not hurt anymore. It just confirmed what I had known all along. Curiosity got the better of me, so I decided to find out for sure. On my 18th birthday, I stayed completely silent. No mention of cake, no hint about the date, no gentle reminder. I waited to see if anyone would notice. Breakfast came and went, nothing. Dinner passed, still nothing. Not a single happy birthday. They had forgotten completely. That evening, I packed a small bag. Inside went the money I had earned from my part-time job at the bookstore down the block. It was not much, barely enough to cover a few weeks of rent, but it would do. It was all I needed to leave. There was no slamming door, no note left behind. I simply walked away. And the strangest part? The phone stayed quiet. No calls that night, none the next day, not even in the weeks that followed. At first, I checked constantly, waiting for the screen to light up. I convinced myself they just needed time. Maybe they thought I was spending the night with a friend. But as days blurred into weeks, the silence remained. No messages, no questions, nothing. And strangely, that emptiness did not destroy me. It unshackled me. If I could vanish so easily, perhaps I had never truly been part of them at all. That night, I made a quiet vow. If they could not bother to look for me, I would never return. Those first weeks alone were not easy, but they were finally mine. I found a small apartment shared with Raphael, a friend's acquaintance who needed help with rent. The floors groaned underfoot, the ceiling bore water stains, and the old heater sputtered as if it might give out at any moment. Yet the quiet there felt different, not sharp or lonely, just calm. For the first time, silence was not a punishment. I could actually hear my own thoughts. I landed a job at a nearby diner, working breakfast shifts and filling in at night when someone did not show up. It was greasy, messy, and loud, but it felt real. Hard work meant something there. Nobody compared me to Lena or Aaron. Nobody cared who I was related to, only that I did my job and pulled my weight. For once, that was enough. That autumn, I enrolled in community college. Financial aid handled part of the cost. The rest came from my diner tips and long weekends fueled by instant noodles. It was exhausting, but purpose pulsed beneath the fatigue. I did not mention my family. When people asked about my past, I let their guesses stand. Some assumed I had aged out of foster care. Others thought I had been kicked out. The truth, that I had been forgotten by people who should have remembered, was too heavy to unpack. Sometimes a glimpse of tenderness would catch me off guard. A mom hugging her son at a bus stop, a dad studying his daughter's grocery bag. For a fleeting second, it stung, like witnessing a birthright I had been denied. But then I would remember the silence, the months without a single call or text. They had not lost me. They had simply let me slip away. That was the moment my life truly began. The first morning I woke up somewhere that was not home, I had to blink a few times before I remembered where I was. Pale light slipped through a bent window blind, cutting a crooked stripe across the ceiling. I stayed still, listening. No dishes clattering in the kitchen, no TV murmuring in the background, no footsteps crossing the hallway. Just the sputter of the radiator and the faint city hum. For a second, I waited for that old hollow ache to surface. It didn't. The quiet felt raw but alive, something that finally belonged to me. Raphael tapped once before nudging the door open. "Hey, roommate, you still breathing?" I said, propping myself up. He smiled. "Coffee fixes everything. There's some in the kitchen. Don't mind the chipped mug. It builds character." That was Raphael, honest, scruffy, kind. The place itself sagged with age, its corners cracked and paint hiding old stories. The ceiling wore brown water stains shaped like continents, and one strip of wallpaper curled like sunburned skin. The window stuck when it got cold, but I didn't care. The door locked when I wanted it to, and the key was mine alone. I brushed my teeth in the cramped bathroom that smelled faintly of vanilla soap and floor cleaner. When I caught my reflection, I saw someone mid-change. Messy hair, sleepless eyes, a sigh lodged in her chest. But beneath it all, something new flickered, a calm that felt earned. That same afternoon, I walked to the diner 2 blocks away and landed a job on the spot. They didn't care about my thin resume or where I'd come from. They just wanted someone who could move quickly, smile through the rush, and haul a bucket of iced tea without spilling. My first morning shift introduced me to Bunny, the cook. She was built like she could bench press the grill, with warm eyes that caught everything. The name didn't suit her at all, which somehow made it perfect. "Rule 1, she said, flipping bacon with the precision of a conductor. "Treat table 13 like they're your favorite cousins. They tip like they've already forgiven you for something." She pointed toward the corner booth with her spatula. "Rule 2, she added, "don't burn the toast or Gus will torch your paycheck." "Gus?" I asked, right as the owner appeared from the back, ledger under his arm, and a pencil tucked behind his ear like he'd been conjured just by the mention of his name. "Toast is sacred," Gus muttered, eyes still on his ledger. "And so are numbers." From him, that counted as gospel. I picked things up fast. How to slide eggs onto a plate without breaking the yolks, how to keep coffee topped off and stories brief, how to treat my section like a tiny shrine that deserved care before I clocked out. For months, I smelled like fryer oil, and my sneakers squished with mop water that never quite dried. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. Work in, reward out. No hidden scorecards, no promises of, "we'll make it up to you later." At night, I'd collapse onto a secondhand futon I'd found online for $40. Through the thin wall, Raphael's guitar drifted softly, lazy, aimless notes that filled the silence better than words ever could. He wasn't much of a talker, which suited me fine, but he had a quiet kindness that showed up in small ways. A washed mug left to dry, a scribbled note on the fridge. "I ate your leftover fries. I'll buy you more tomorrow." In that tiny space, no one apologized for existing. We just figured out how to fit. That fall, I started at community college, a scatter of low, plain buildings full of people trying to restart something. Everyone there carried more than books. Second jobs, toddlers, aging parents, unfinished dreams. Showing up was the real accomplishment. I took intro comp, statistics, and an early morning gen ed class in a stuffy room that smelled faintly of peppermint and carpet glue. Each subject had its own notebook, my handwriting tight and precise, and a color-coded calendar that looked like stained glass on my phone. On paydays, I'd stand in the bursar's line and hand over whatever I could. Financial aid helped, but the rest came from diner tips and long shifts that blurred together. Some nights, fatigue pinned me to the mattress. I dragged myself home after doubles, inbox full of deadlines, brain buzzing from the smell of grease and coffee. I'd stare at the ceiling, counting minutes I didn't have, then tie my hair back and force one more task. One paragraph, one bit of code, one math problem. Each tiny step pulled me further from where I'd started. It wasn't graceful, but it was progress, and that was enough. I first crossed paths with Mel in the library, where she stood frowning at a recording mic as if it might bite her.
She was in charge of the campus podcast, her voice smooth and rich, like the kind that belonged on a late-night station, always amused, always leaning toward a laugh. "Know anything about audio interfaces?" she asked, eyeing a mess of tangled cords. "A bit," I told her, though the truth was I knew a lot more than that. I'd learned to understate what I could do. It kept expectations manageable. We spent the next hour sorting out both the knots in the cables and the glitch in the setup. When the speakers finally crackled to life with clean, steady sound, Mel threw her hands up as if we'd just pulled off a safe landing. "I'm Mel," she said, sticking out her hand. "You're officially my hero." "Marissa," I replied, shaking it. The word hero caught somewhere in my throat. I'd never been called that before. Just a quiet worker, the girl who clocked in, kept her head down, and folded laundry without being asked. "Come by the studio sometime," Mel said, already grinning again. "We pay our helpers in vending machine junk food." I met Drew in Computer Lab B, a room where the fluorescent lights buzzed like restless insects. He had a talent for resurrecting broken things with duct tape, a paperclip, and a can of Red Bull. Printers, scanners, even the professor's sanity. He was the first person to show me that most systems run on improvisation. Everyone pretends the world's neatly engineered, but really it's all temporary fixes we keep calling permanent. He said it half as a joke, half as a guide to survival. One Tuesday after my shift at the diner, Bunny handed me an extra slice of apple pie wrapped in wax paper. "Take it," she said. "Counts as your fruits and vegetables." I carried it home like a fragile secret. The apartment was empty, the heater ticking softly. When I set the pie down, I noticed a post-it on the cupboard. "You got this. R." 3 crooked words, nothing special, and somehow they undid me. I stood there crying over a slice of pie that had already gone cold. Sometimes the universe doesn't give you a hug, just a small reminder that someone's on your side. Now and then, the old ache returned. A mother kneeling to tie her daughter's shoe. A father in the checkout line choosing the name brand cereal just to see his kid smile. I'd catch myself watching too long, and then look away, embarrassed by the sting. I didn't want to turn bitter at kindness just because it passed me by. I wanted to notice it, maybe even learn how to create my own. When people asked about my family, I kept it vague. "We don't really talk" was enough to end most conversations. Where others swapped holiday memories, I filled the space with stories about diner chaos and Bunny's unshakable rules about toast. I got good at asking questions, better ones than the kind I hoped no one would turn on me. "Where are you from? Why did you leave? Did you try to fix it?" People love to balance other people's pain like it's math. I stopped giving them the numbers. Life wasn't all shifts and study sessions, though it often felt that way. Between late nights in the lab and the endless clatter of dishes, I kept noticing a guy at the library's tech desk. He was a year ahead of me, patient to a fault, calm with every panicked student who lost a file. His wristwatch was old and dented, silver face dulled with time. When printers jammed or login failed, he never scolded. He leaned over my desk one afternoon and asked softly, "What were you trying to do? Let's figure it out together." His name was Lucas. Back then, I didn't know much about him, only that his kind of attention made you feel less foolish for needing it. I wasn't looking for anything, but sometimes our eyes met, and I was always the first to glance away. As autumn slipped into winter, the apartment adjusted in its own way. Drafts crept through the windows, so we stuffed towels into the daps. The heater grew louder, almost companionable in its stubborn rhythm. I found a pair of thrift store mittens for $1 and discovered that deep pockets can hold more than just hands. They can hold a life. Raphael and I became a kind of almost family, dividing grocery bills like we were playing house. We bickered playfully over which cereal to buy, pretending to stand our ground, then slipped each other's favorites into the cart when the other wasn't looking. After late dinner shifts, I'd walk home through the cold, earbuds in, the air sharp enough to taste, streetlights blurred into small constellations over the damp pavement. Sometimes I'd picture my parents' house at that same hour, TV humming, dishes drying, the hallway lights still burning for people who never noticed I'd stopped walking those halls. I wondered if they ever felt the outline of me missing.
The thought came softly, almost kindly. If they did, I didn't owe that ache a thing. Not my return, not an apology for leaving, not another performance of gratitude for love that never arrived. Still, the heart is clumsy about letting go. On bus rides home, I'd watch my reflection in the window and invent conversations that would never happen. In them, my mother finally said the quiet parts out loud. The choices, not mistakes. The times she looked right through me. The dark birthdays. The holidays where my name was mentioned, but my chair stayed empty. In those imagined calls, she was sorry, and I was steady. Then the bus would lurch, the doors hiss open, and the dream would vanish like fog. Midterms hit, and exhaustion turned everything absurdly funny. After midnight, I crushed my stats exam, but barely scraped by in Comp Lab when the computers crashed 10 minutes in. Drew managed to resurrect them like a magician, but not fast enough to save my lost work. Bunny celebrated my passing grade with a pancake the size of a steering wheel. "Tell the world to watch out," she said, flipping another. "You're a quiet freight train. By the time they notice you, you'll already be gone." That line stayed with me. Later that Sunday night, sitting cross-legged on my futon with half an essay open and a soft playlist humming, I thought about what she meant. A quiet freight train doesn't wait for applause or permission. It just moves, steady, unstoppable, already halfway to somewhere new. My wins came quietly. An on-time bill payment, a cleanly formatted assignment, a kind word from someone who didn't owe me a thing. The silence I grew up with had always felt like judgment. The one I lived in now felt like freedom, a wide-open space. Right before bed, my phone buzzed. The screen showed an unknown number, and for a second, my pulse kicked. It turned out to be nothing more than a bus line promotion, but for that brief heartbeat, I felt a glimpse of the future. One day, I knew a message might arrive that tried to pull me back. I'd wondered often how I would respond. Barefoot on the cold floor, I looked around. The cracked walls, the old heater groaning its way through another night, the notebooks stacked like a ladder I was slowly building for myself. If I answered, I thought, who would I become? The radiator gave its familiar cough, and I found myself smiling. I switched off the lamp and slipped under covers that still carried faint traces of detergent and diner grease. The silence that filled the room wasn't empty anymore. It was earned. Whatever waited ahead would meet me in motion, and whatever reached from the past would have to chase to keep up. Outside, the city breathed. Inside, I finally slept. By the time I turned 20, I'd become someone my younger self might not have recognized. I'd finished my associate's degree, transferred to a 4-year university, and balanced a part-time job at the campus library with bits of freelance work on the side. The library gig wasn't glamorous, resetting logins, rescuing students from printer meltdowns, but it was steady, and I liked its quiet rhythm. Freelance projects filled the gaps. Small websites for local nonprofits, donor dashboards for community programs, work that mattered even if my name never appeared on it. Most evenings I came home worn out, but it was the satisfying kind of tired, the kind that meant progress. When our hours overlapped, Raphael and I shared simple dinners. Sometimes Lucas, yes, that same, calm, unflappable Lucas from the tech desk, walked me home after my late shifts, the glint of his old watch catching the light as we talked. We weren't officially together, but his presence fit beside mine in a way that didn't ask me to shrink. 2 years had passed since I'd left home. 2 birthdays unnoticed, 2 Christmases gone unmentioned, 2 summers without a single word. And then one evening, as I was squinting at the scroll in my notes, my phone lit up with a name I hadn't seen in years. Dad Mobile. For a moment, I honestly thought I was imagining it. I stared at the screen, my heartbeat loud in my ears. I couldn't move. I couldn't answer. Not after 2 years of absolute silence. I let it buzz until it gave up. Then the voicemail arrived. "Hey, it's me. Dad."
We were just wondering how you've been. You haven't been around in a while. Mom's been asking. Anyway, call us back. All right?" That was all. The words felt stiff, hollow, like he was reading from a script he barely remembered. No warmth, no apology, not a mention of the forgotten birthdays or the dinners where my seat sat untouched. Just the sound of someone trying to pretend absence was normal. I didn't return the call. Instead, I sat there with the phone in my hands, holding it the way you'd hold a knock you don't plan to answer. One that sounds almost, but not quite like home. Something in me started to simmer. Not the kind of anger that burns fast and loud, but the slow, buried kind that builds under the ribs. They hadn't even realized I was gone until now. Why suddenly remember? 2 days later, another text appeared, this time from Lena. "Hey, Dad's been trying to reach you. You should call him. It's important." No context, no explanation, just orders, as if I was still the invisible sister expected to fall in line. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened her profile. There she was, shining in a string of curated photos, holiday dinners, matching sweaters, Aaron grinning between our parents like the years hadn't erased me at all. They looked complete, like I'd been neatly edited out of the family portrait. And now they wanted something. After 2 years of nothing? I put the phone down, but the thoughts spun like storm clouds. I didn't block them. I didn't need to. They'd already cut me out once. I was the one who had rebuilt what was left. Still, the question lingered like smoke I couldn't breathe past. What do they want? It couldn't be me. Not really. Not anymore. That night, I dreamed of the old house. The door opened into the dining room. My chair sat waiting, untouched, as if for a ghost. But when I stepped forward, it disappeared. The rest of them kept laughing, eating, raising their glasses, as though I'd never existed. I called out, but my voice didn't reach them. When I woke, my pillow was damp. 2 days after that, another message came, this time from my father again. A blurry photo of the house, like a cheap postcard from a place that no longer held me. I deleted it without opening. If he thought nostalgia could reel me back, he didn't understand. That wasn't home anymore. I wasn't lost. I'd simply stopped waiting to be found. Still, something restless stayed with me.
Lucas picked up on it before I said a word. We were crossing campus, snow crunching beneath our shoes, when he glanced over. "You've been quiet," he said, his voice softer than the snowfall. "It's nothing," I started, then hesitated. His expression was calm, patient, the kind that gave you room instead of questions. "My dad called," I said finally. "First time in 2 years." Lucas slowed, looking ahead. "What did he say?" "That he was wondering how I've been," I answered, letting out a hollow laugh. Like I just forgot to come home one weekend. He didn't correct me or offer comfort. He just slid his hands into his jacket pockets and matched my pace. I stared at the white flakes melting against my coat and whispered, "I don't think they want me back. They want something, but I don't know what yet." Lucas didn't say anything. He didn't have to. The silence between us wasn't the old kind, the one that hurt. It was the kind that held space while the snow kept falling. I shoved my hands deeper into my coat pockets, trying to hide the tremor in them. For the first time since I'd left, that old dread began to stir, the one that whispered no distance was ever far enough to outrun their shadows, and I didn't know if I was ready to hear whatever it was they suddenly needed to say. By Friday, the messages had piled up like unopened mail. My dad's stiff voicemails, Lena's vague nudges, all circling the same hollow point. No apology, no explanation, just an abrupt urgency, as if 2 years of silence could be erased with, "Now you have to come." At first, I ignored them, but curiosity has sharp teeth. I wanted to see how long they'd keep reaching before saying something real, something that sounded like remorse. But those words never appeared. Then came one more message from my father. "We should talk. Just 1 hour, please." So I agreed.
Not for reconciliation, but for answers. I picked a cafe halfway between my world and theirs. Public, quiet, neutral. I even set the boundaries in my reply. 1 hour. The morning of the meeting, my stomach twisted like it wanted out. Lucas noticed as we crossed the library lobby. "You sure you're ready for this?" "I'm not sure at all," I admitted, "but I need to know what they're really after." He gave my hand a steady squeeze. "Then make sure you leave with answers, not guilt." By the time I walked into the cafe that afternoon, the smell of roasted coffee beans hit like a wave, grounding and nauseating all at once. My nerves buzzed under my skin. I spotted him right away. My dad looked smaller. The years had sunk into him, his hair more gray than I remembered, his shoulders rounded like someone carrying regret, but not sure where to set it down. I didn't stand. I stayed where I was, earbuds hanging around my neck, forcing him to make the first move. He hesitated, caught somewhere between a smile and an apology, then settled on a strained grin. "Hey, Marissa, you look good." I gave a small nod but didn't speak. He ordered a coffee. I didn't. I just laced my fingers together on the table and waited. After a moment, he cleared his throat. "It's been a while." One eyebrow lifted before I could stop it. A while. That was what he called 2 years of absence. "We were surprised when you left. You didn't say anything." The word surprised landed like a slap. I'd disappeared for 2 years and that was their takeaway? Surprise? My silence must have shown because he shifted uneasily. "We thought maybe you were staying with a friend," he added quickly. Then the months passed and it just got harder to reach out. So that was it. Their excuse for vanishing. He kept talking, filling the air with stories about how the house hadn't felt the same, how Lena had been so busy, how Aaron missed me in his own way. Every word sounded like a script meant for someone else, someone who already learned what it felt like to stop waiting for them anymore. He pieced together scraps of family nostalgia, like proof of something real, but the one thing missing was the only thing that mattered, an apology. Finally, I interrupted. "Why now?" His fingers tightened around the coffee cup. "What do you mean?" "I mean, why reach out after 2 years? What suddenly changed?" He looked down, the pause stretched between us. "Your grandmother passed away," he said at last. "Things have been tense. We're trying to reconnect." And there it was. Not about me, not about the silence, the neglect, or the years I spent waiting for a call that never came. Just another family emergency. They didn't want me back. They wanted the missing piece that could make their picture look whole again. I leaned back, feeling the weight of it settle, solid and undeniable. "I'm sorry about Grandma, but I'm not the person you call to fix what's broken anymore." His mouth opened like he had a line prepared, something noble or rehearsed, but I didn't let him find it. I stood up, the chairs scraping sharply against the floor. "You didn't check in when I left. You didn't even ask if I was okay. So no, I'm not here for closure. I'm here to say I've moved on." The sound of my chair sliding back seemed to echo long after I walked out. I slipped into my jacket, past the counter where the barista frothed milk, and stepped into the crisp air outside. I didn't feel rage. I didn't feel victory. What I felt was something quieter, steadier. Certainty. For once, I didn't need him to validate my choices. I knew exactly where I stood. And that truth scared me far less than the idea of returning. The next morning, before I even got out of bed, my phone buzzed. A new message from my father. "We should have handled things differently. Your mom wants to see you too." I stared at the screen, waiting for the old ache to surface. It didn't. I felt calm, almost detached. There was still no apology, no acknowledgement of the years I spent unseen, just another vague tug designed to reel me back in. An hour later, Lena texted, "Dad's hurt. You didn't have to be so cold." That word cold nearly made me laugh. I'd spent my entire life burning myself to keep that family warm. I'd given them patience, affection, effort, everything I never got in return. And now that I'd finally stopped giving them pieces of myself, suddenly I was cold. No, not cold.
Finished. That night, I sat at my desk, the laptop casting a soft blue halo in the dark. I reread their messages, once, twice, 3 times before opening a blank reply. My fingers hovered. Then I wrote, "I hope you and Mom are well. I've built a life I'm proud of. I'm not interested in reopening old wounds. Please respect that." I read it over again 3 times, steady and certain. Then I hit send. No explanations, no history lessons, just boundaries. Quiet, clear, final. When I turned off my phone, the silence that followed didn't press down on me like before. It lifted. It felt like peace. That weekend, I let myself settle into that feeling. Lucas showed up carrying grocery bags that looked one breath away from splitting open. "You didn't have to get all this," I said as he unloaded noodles, eggs, and a bottle of cheap red wine. "Didn't have to," he replied with that easy smile. "Wanted to." We cooked in Raphael's slanted little kitchen, elbows brushing in the cramped space. Lucas chopped vegetables with careful precision, while I stirred sauce that kept threatening to overflow. At one point, he reached over and wiped a smear of tomato from my cheek with his thumb. For a second, I forgot how to breathe. It wasn't fancy, pasta from a box, chipped bowls, the heater groaning like it wanted attention, but it was real. It was ours. After dinner, Raphael wandered in, guitar in hand, playing something soft, while Lucas and I stood at the sink, shoulder to shoulder, washing dishes. The air was thick with warmth and steam, but it felt full, not noisy, just alive. Lying awake later on my futon, I thought about the 2 silences that had shaped my life. The old one had been punishment, an emptiness where love should have lived. The new one was freedom, space I could fill with my own choices, my own people, my own worth. And in that moment, I knew no matter what my family said or did next, I wouldn't go back. Weeks went by. The calls slowed, then stopped. No more voicemails from Dad, no more vague texts from Lena. At first, the quiet made me uneasy, like waiting for thunder after lightning. But the storm never came. Slowly, I realized I didn't miss it. For the first time, silence wasn't something to survive. It was something to rest in. My days found the rhythm. Coffee in the morning with Raphael's guitar humming nearby, classes at the university, late-night coding sessions for small nonprofits, and quiet walks home with Lucas after his library shifts, the face of his battered watch catching the streetlight. We talked about everything: AI, diner recipes, the best way to keep noodles from sticking, and somehow it never felt like filler conversation. It was easy, steady, real. One night, sitting on the fire escape beside Lucas, the city lights flickering below us, I finally said what I'd been carrying for years. I used to think I needed an apology to move on, that if they ever said the right words, if they finally admitted what they did, I'd be able to breathe again. Lucas didn't say anything. He just listened, quiet and present, his attention like a small mercy. "But I get it now," I went on, my voice steadier than my hands. "Healing doesn't always come from someone else's closure. Sometimes it's choosing not to explain yourself anymore. It's investing in a life that doesn't require their approval." He nodded, a faint smile crossing his face. "Sounds like you've already made that choice." And he was right. I started noticing it everywhere. Back then, everything in my family came with strings. A ride meant I owed gratitude later. A cooked meal meant exaggerated thanks. Every act of kindness turned into proof of their generosity, another debt I was expected to carry. Now, kindness was simple, unpriced. Mel dropped off vending machine snacks when I studied too long in the podcast booth. Drew patched my laptop fan with duct tape and a wink. And Lucas showed up because he wanted to, not because he needed me to complete some family tableau. I rarely mentioned my parents. When people asked, I said, "We don't talk." Most left it there. The few that didn't, I met with a look that shut down curiosity before it turned invasive. One afternoon, a cousin I hadn't spoken to in years sent a message, "Hope you're doing well."
I answered politely, briefly, and put my phone aside without hesitation. For once, I felt no tug, no guilt, no gravitational pull toward a life I'd already outgrown. Their orbit had finally lost its hold. Sometimes, late at night, I wondered what it might have been like to grow up in a family that truly saw me. A mother who remembered birthdays, a father who cared enough to ask, sisters who didn't treat me like background noise. But then I'd look around. A kitchen warm with laughter, a degree nearly finished, a future shaped by my own hands. I wasn't defined by what I'd missed. I was made by what I'd built anyway. And what I'd built was enough. Every now and then, Lena's posts would surface in my feed. Another family dinner, another smiling photo that looked like an advertisement for togetherness, another holiday photo, smiling faces, matching sweaters, the same polished version of togetherness. But this time, I didn't feel anger, not even resentment, just distance. The kind you feel watching strangers through a train window, familiar shapes blurring into the landscape, fading the farther you go. Because the truth was simple. I hadn't walked away to wound them. I'd walked away because I finally understood I deserved more than being invisible. And I found it. Not in a replacement family, not in some grand reconciliation, but in the quiet, deliberate act of no longer waiting for apologies, for validation, for proof that I mattered. I chose to live fully and freely without glancing over my shoulder. That night, I stood by the window of my apartment, the city lights spilling out below like a constellation drawn just for me. The heater ticked its steady rhythm. From the next room came Raphael's gentle guitar, and somewhere in the echoes of the day, Lucas's laugh still lingered. For the first time in as long as I can remember, I felt whole. And standing there in the glow of my own small world, I understood. I hadn't been lost at all. I had simply, finally, found my way.